fated to die in a rice paddy in Bong Son, South Vietnam on June 18, 1965, with green North Vietnamese Army, NVA, tracers searing past my naked, immobile body. My mind was not occupied by fear or regret. No, I drifted in and out of consciousness, my body perforated with gunshot wounds, leeches feasting on every open wound, with one thought jabbing at my semi-lucid brain. Damn, my military career is finished. I'll never see combat again. Through 11 years in Special Forces and 27 months in Southeast Asia, I had never been bashful when it came to combat. I lived for it, studied it, and understood it. I knew the risks and did not fear death. Still, I had never come close to being in a spot like this. Flat on my back, shot to hell, lying behind a meager bamboo stand that provided pathetic protection. I was out of ammunition and gear. I had taken bullets to my knees, an arm, an ankle, a foot, and my forehead. The bones of my right foot and ankle sat there fully exposed, doing me absolutely no good while causing a breathtaking amount of pain. The force of one of the bullets had driven the sole of my right jungle boot through my foot and ankle and into my tibia. I could not crawl, let alone walk. The enemy had already gotten to me, stripping me and leaving me for dead. In this state, I apparently was not deemed worthy of the extra bullet that would have clinched my death. I was all alone, not a friendly in sight. There was no assurance that I would ever leave this bloody field or see the world from an upright position again. And still the NVA kept firing. We had pissed the bastards off something fierce, and they weren't going to stop until every last one of us was as dead as I appeared to be. Their infernal green tracers were whizzing over my head, mocking my defenselessness, popping like cannon fire around my head as they broke the sound barrier. The kerosene smell and blast furnace heat of the napalm blanketed that rice paddy, brought there by the Air Force F-4C Phantom and Navy F-8 jets screaming above. When I took stock of my own dire predicament, peering through the now crusted blood from the wound that had torn open my forehead, comprehending my utter nakedness, wondering how and why I continued to live, I began to ask myself a different question. When all this is over, how in the hell am I ever going to con my way back to the battlefield? Getting into the battlefield was all that ever mattered to me. From the moment I joined the U.S. Army as an 18-year-old, I have never been content to sit back and hear of others' exploits. My desire to be among the troops at the point of attack struck me first in early 1951, when we were at war in Korea, and I was stuck in the 82nd Airborne Division at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. I had had more than enough of the 82nd Airborne Division and was tired of stateside duty, so in April 1951, I re-enlisted for combat in Korea, which means I signed on for another 3 years of service just to get my ass out of the United States and into the war zone. I didn't like the Army at all until I got a taste of combat in Korea. I advanced from a private first class to an infantry platoon sergeant while in Korea. More important, I learned what made men tick and what combat was all about. For the first time in my military life, I felt completely at home. I could have asked for a more forgiving landscape than Korea, which was like no other place. We'd climb a hill with great expectations of meeting the enemy, only to arrive at the top to see another slightly larger hill looming. All the trees were stripped for firewood, and cold penetrated my bones. I was only 21 years old, so I handled the cold much better than later in life, but we Texans and Floridians in Korea were continuously cold. As far as wars go, Vietnam, with its insufferable humidity and constant heat, was much more to my liking. Upon returning from Korea in December 1952, I entered Officers' Candidate School in Fort Benning. During the 12th or 13th week, I contracted malaria and spent a week in the hospital. To return to OCS, I would have had to revert back to the 8th week, since my class was too far advanced for me to catch up with it. I refused this move and was sent to Germany as a sergeant first class and assigned to the 5th Infantry Division as a platoon sergeant. It was during my stay in Germany, sometime in 1953, that I read about Special Forces moving a unit to Bad Tölz, Germany. I began politicking for a transfer to SF.